Hello and welcome to Onesies, the podcast of one season wonders and blunders. My name's Andrew.
My name's Emily.
And this season we are talking about Freaks and Geeks, the 1999 Paul Feig, Judd Apatow NBC show.
NBC.
1 hour comedy, teen comedy drama set in the early 1980s. This is episode 5. And so we are talking about episodes 9 and 10 of the show. And we'll be kicking it off with The Diary, which is not an episode all about Martin Starr, which I was told it was.
I cut that out, so not to embarrass myself. I apologize.
I guess this won't make it in either, folks.
It might.
So, all right. So let's see. Did I actually mark any of my items to talk out? Oh, yes. Apparently I did.
Okay. I have 3. I didn't mark my 3 things, but I took a lot more notes for this one.
Okay. So in order, Junkie or a Hooker, Keep It Clean, Just Racists, and Neil Shatner.
Okay. I'm going to... The Shatner thing kills me. Divvy 'em up. We're going to talk a little bit about Coach Biff being kind of a jerk because it helps move the scene along, too. We're going to talk about... we're going to talk about The Diary because that's something I have a lot to say about because I was a teenage girl once. And we will talk about Alan, the bully, a little bit for my 3 things.
Okay. So this episode, the Freaks plot is Lindsay and Kim. Actually, it's about the girls because the show starts with them going hitchhiking, and it's unclear why they're hitchhiking
and where they're going. Essentially, yeah, just it seems like somewhere nearby.
Yep, but they didn't want to walk. And so they weren't having any luck until Kim tells Lindsay to show her boobs, or boobs toward the road, I believe is the quote.
Yeah.
And then they get a ride from someone who knows her father, who informs them that he's going to tattle on Lindsay, which sets off the Kim is a bad influence and we need to meet her mother arc, which ties into The Diary. But also the Geeks storyline then is...
Bill gets mad that they keep getting picked last, that he specifically keeps getting picked last for sports. I mean, it's a pretty typical teenage plot point for any TV show, really. But Coach Biff has this line that, the jocks are picking all of their friends. And as the pickings get thin, as it were, meaning it's, Gordon Crisp, who we met last week in one of the episodes, who's an overweight kid, Sam Neill and Bill, and a couple other just scrawny, small, presumably other geeks in the school who we just haven't seen yet. And Coach Biff looks at the group of kids left to pick from and says, divvy 'em up. All right, divvy 'em up. And it's sort of a heartbreaking moment for Bill, who thinks, I might be good. I might be very good at this game and nobody will ever know because I always get picked last and I get sent out to left field. Incidentally, that's the position I played when I was in softball. But so a little sympathy towards Bill on my end. But
it's a very sympathetic Bill arc.
Yeah.
But actually the Geeks arc is, I don't know. We'll get to the Diary stuff. So, but another aspect of Lindsay's arc is that Nick is being weird to her since the breakup, including shushing her and Lindsay in English class, where they talk about Jack Kerouac, which comes back in later nicely. So who goes in and steals the phone numbers? Is it Bill?
It's Bill.
Yep. So Bill sneaks into the athletic office and grabs a piece of paper that has the teacher's phone numbers. And then he proceeds to call, and he calls Coach Biff, who is watching Different Strokes at the time. in a very lonely bachelor's existence, and tells him that he is Gordon's father and he wants Gordon to get, and Gordon really wants to play. And so Coach Biff should put him in, presumably thinking that somehow all ships will rise if he puts Kim in, or Gordon in. But then the Kim's mom thing goes really quick too. Like it's in the first 15 minutes that Kim's mom is over having dinner with Lindsay's mom and dad. Kim is not over, which I thought it was weird that they were having like a cop conference, parents' cop conference.
And none of the kids are eating dinner either. The Weir's kids are not at the table either. So it is kind of this weird, like why didn't you just go meet for coffee and talk about this? Yeah. Or like, why does it have to be a dinner? It's weird.
And we find out that Kim's mom used to have a much better life till her husband left her with all these shitty kids, and girls all lie.
Oh no, it's not all these shitty kids, because the older brother was a perfect angel. It's just Kim.
Oh, it's just Kim.
It's just Kim. And that's why I think the mom is talking so badly about girls, being such a misogynist about her daughter, who just happens to be, a confused, angry girl, seemingly, because she's lying. Yeah, she's having sex and doing drugs. But, there's something going on potentially that we'll see later that causes her to react that way. The mom's not a perfect angel. But yes, the mom is going on and on about how terrible Kim is. And the only way she knows all of these things about the sex and the drugs is that she reads Kim's diary. And that gives Dad the brilliant idea that maybe they should read Lindsay's diary as well. The mom is very hesitant. Mrs. Weir is very, very hesitant to do so. My mother read my diary, and I hated her for it. So good on Lindsay's mom for that instinct. But everybody hates their parents when you're at one point. And
I just realized this ties into Free Spirit, which frequently had the teenage girl's privacy violated as a joke. Cool.
This, however, isn't a joke. It's a rather dramatic plot point, and the mom instantly regrets having read the diary.
But so before they go after the diary, because they do that during the day, we have where's the junkie or hooker line? Oh, that's just Dad saying. That's just Dad talking shit. Okay,
that's later. That's later.
There's not a lot of
when they have
stuff.
That's when they have the discussion about when they're creeping into Lindsay's room.
Right. But first we have Lindsay telling Kim that all the things her mom and dad said about her, which upsets Kim. And
that essentially the parents say that she can't hang out with Kim anymore, but Lindsay's going to disregard that, or her intention is to disregard that. But Kim gets so upset, not necessarily about what the parents said, that she kind of storms off. But she is upset. She is upset about it. But we find out later that it's maybe not so much about what the parents said, and maybe more about Lindsay not having defended her.
And so then also Bill does not get picked for the baseball team. So we find out that the Gordon dad's plan backfires. So what will they do?
Gordon gets picked and refuses. He doesn't want to play shortstop. He wants to play left reserve, right? So he essentially sits out on the left field while Bill does whatever work is needed. He doesn't want to play sports. Poor Gordon, used as a tool, but he still gets what he wants, which is fine. But that leads Bill to his second glorious plan, which is to prank call Biff again. This time with a different different tactic. Yeah, different tactic.
Yes. Do we want to talk? Do you just want to finish up that arc and then go back to the diary? Or
yeah. I think another interesting thing about this is you meet Neil's father, who is Neil grown up. I mean, which is hilarious.
Yes, the geeks are hanging out at Neil's, ready to make another phone call, and the dad happens across them. There's a great bit about the Sam, I think, complaining that Neil doesn't have any good cereal, and Neil says, "I don't eat cereal. All I have for breakfast is coffee.
I just have my coffee."
And they're just like, "No, you don't." Like, but then Dad comes in and tells them about the prank calls he used to do, which is where the keep it clean, just racist bit comes in.
Yeah.
So there's also, the dad's also like, "And don't do any heavy breathing," to which Bill responds, "Heavy breathing? That's a good idea."
That's another one of those things. I was telling my husband about this today, where they have this kind of running thing. And we've talked about it the last episode too, where, or last episode of the podcast, where the kids just take like random advice from people and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea." Like, it's so funny. But this is like the opposite, when, he says, "Don't do it." And Bill's like, "Oh yeah, heavy breathing. That's great." I love it. Just the kind of innocence of it is very funny. And I can't find the actor who played the dad.
He's very familiar.
Very familiar. He's not listed on, or Wikipedia. I'm sorry. Why would I be looking at Facebook?
Why are you looking at his Facebook?
I'm looking at nobody's Facebook.
Okay. So while you look for that, I will recount some of the phone call that Bill does.
Yes, please. Do a voice. Do a voice too.
I can't do a voice. Or talk very low about it. Bill calls Coach Biff up and tells him to go sniff a jockstrap, you butt slapper. You're a stinky turd. But it goes on for at least 45 seconds of things like that. PG rating, but like just relentless. And then we cut to Coach Biff hanging up the phone and him being there with a woman, not on his own, and her saying, "Who was that?" And a very shook Coach Biff says, "It was an old friend." So apparently he did not get a lot of prank phone calls from students who call him things like that. But then they hang up. Neil is mortified that Bill made such a phone call from his house and says he will get in trouble if the cops trace it.
Yeah.
And Bill says, "No, I won't. You will."
Yeah.
And Sam's kind of like, "I'm the only one who won't get in any trouble, huh?"
Yeah, that was really funny. The realization that Neil has that he's going to get in trouble.
Oh, I just got to my note about the next scene. Okay. So that has the analog to Dad calling Lindsay a
hooker,
junkie, and a hooker when, okay. So, but let's finish up the Bill arc. Okay. So the way Coach Biff handles this is he brings in the entire gym class to sort of audition so he can figure out who did it. So
he has memorized, presumably, because there was he wasn't recording the phone call. He has memorized what this prank call said and written it down, and has each of the students, the male students in his class, read this script to him in various voices, in various tones of voice. It's so funny. So you were gonna talk about Neil.
Yeah. So Neil starts doing it, and he starts doing it, and so they cut between the kids. So it's not like one interview; it's all the interviews concurrent, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Otherwise, it would be consecutive. Concurrent. Sorry, everyone. I forgot my autobiography. Or no, I forgot that's a scene in Malcolm X, the movie. I don't remember if it's an autobiography. But anyway, so we soon realize that Neil is doing a William Shatner impression. And the way that really gets punctuated is when Coach Biff says to him, "Okay, now do it as Spock."
Yeah, yeah.
But there's also the bully, Alan.
This is my point. That whole scene.
Yes.
As much as I love Neil, as much as I love the awkwardness of these other students kind of reading these goofy lines and looking up, what's his name? Alan, the bully, laughing hysterically as he's reading it, like laughing at Coach Fredericks, is makes the scene for me as much as anything else. Him, like his real dopey, like Beavis and Butthead style laugh is so great. Oh, he was good in this. He was really good. In just that one scene alone, he was great.
So eventually, Bill's there and he's doing it in his regular voice, but then eventually Coach Biff says, okay, now read it low.
Yeah.
And pretty quickly, it's clear that Bill was the prank phone caller. And Coach Biff is like something about, did you think it was funny? And Bill explains he didn't do it to be funny. He did it because he's angry and he is sick of being picked last. And so they talk about this, and they talk like it's a really good dramatic scene for Martin Starr. Mm-hmm. And, Biff finally listens to the geeks in his class and things like that. And so when they get to the end of the arc, what happens is Bill and Gordon get to pick the teams, and they leave like the biggest jocks for last. And it's all the geeks get picked first.
And they're having the time of their lives, just having been picked first. And it's really great. But what surprised me kind of was that the whole idea was Bill's. Like the coach just like didn't even recognize that this was something that he could do to even out the playing field, right? Like he never even thought to pick these kids first.
You've met gym teachers, right?
Yeah, good point.
You could have, I imagine not a single gym teacher ever saw this episode and tried doing this. I don't think,
Good point. Okay. So I found out who plays
Who was it?
Who's Neil's dad. It's this guy named Sam McMurray.
Yes, Sam McMurray.
And he has been in a bajillion things. He's done a lot of voice work, which wouldn't surprise you if you see him in this episode, even if he's doing racist voices. Including on things like Boondocks and Rugrats and all sorts of things. Like he's been in all sorts of things. NCIS, Desperate Housewives, State of the Union I've never heard of. He was in the TV version of what's the lady baseball thing?
League of Our Own,
which I didn't even know they made a TV show of.
I don't know how many of them aired.
He's been on Friends. Oh, maybe that's the next season.
You've seen it. Look at his movies. He's been in movies you've seen too, I'm sure.
Anyway, he's been in a million things. So
yeah,
he's one of those guys whose faces you'll recognize as soon as you see him.
So the arc for the Geeks ends with the baseball game with Rocky music playing, and it's a great sequence. Like there's a good punchline to it. Like it's a really successful. It's the most successful thing about
the episode.
Episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to the diary now. We're done talking about successful things. Let's get back to the diary, though some of it's more successful than some other parts. So when the parents find the diary, that is when Dad makes a comment about Lindsay turning out to be a junkie or a hooker. And they open up her diary to read it, and she describes her parents as boring and repressed.
And then to which Dad replies, "I'll repress her." And it's like, it's funny, but it's also like, yeah, the kind of the point of this is that she doesn't want to be repressed.
Followed by, can robots really be in love?
Yeah.
So Mom is mortified and realizes what's going on, and Dad doesn't really get it, which is, just that thing that guys are really fucking stupid to make a plot work. So that's going to be him the rest of the episode, and he's going to get rewarded for it. So then actually the next check-in on that arc is actually more about Kim, where she and Daniel are talking about, Kim is still upset that Lindsay didn't defend her, and Daniel's kind of like, but you do drugs and have sex.
Yeah.
And he's like, I mean, what parent wants their kid doing those things? Which does not make him feel any better.
No, in fact, it makes her feel worse. And even when Daniel says something like, "I like that you're a slut," or something, like, she gets real pissed. She gets real pissed.
Yes. So, we also forgot in the diary, Lindsay makes fun of mom's cooking.
Yeah.
The roteness of the meals. So mom that night tries to make a fancy dinner. And dad mocks her, and the kids laugh with him at mom. And he asks, he's going to go make a sandwich or something, and his son's going to have one too.
Well, he does play with his food. I like the Sam,
yes.
like, oh, dad's playing with his food. When he picks up the little Cornish hen and starts talking like Senior Wences. It was funny, but maybe not the right time for a joke. It was a good joke, but a wrong time for the joke because he was mocking his wife.
So when he gets up to go make himself a good dinner of an American sandwich, she says, "Can you help clear the table?" And he says, "Nope, that's your job." And she's just like, "Can't you?" And he's like, "You don't help me at the store for 12 hours a day, do you?" And that's actually where that's the extent of the development of their relationship. He'll get rewarded for that later. So let's see. Next up, we have Kim and Lindsay, English class.
Or is it Spanish? Oh, no. Okay. Yeah.
It is English. But Daniel has talked to Lindsay about trying to make up with Kim because Daniel's sick of Kim complaining to him.
It's not for the benefit of their friendship. It's so Kim will get off his tip, right?
Exactly.
Like, what a dick.
Exactly.
She's driving me crazy. Driving me crazy. Sorry.
So
I don't mean to mock it. I don't mean to mock Italian Americans, but James Franco sucks in this particular episode. He's such a selfish asshole. Sorry.
So in English class, Kim's got a hot take on Jack Kerouac, and it turns out that she's right about her hot take, and Lindsay backs her up, much to the annoyance of the teacher who's
like a little dweeb and
who loves the beats.
Yeah, who
would have to be a thing. Was Kerouac the one who was just like was he the Canadian who was like a fascist? One of the beats.
I don't think
whichever one was born in Canada and moved here was just like Henry Kissinger sycophant, like so pro-war that when you read about the beats, you're just like, how is this like a good thing? That's not
Jack Kerouac. He was born
not Jack Kerouac.
He was born in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Okay. One of them is from Canada, and he was and like they even commented on him being a pro-war fascist, and it's just like they were just like, but it's fine though because he's a white guy, so we're all cool. Anyway, after class, Lindsay's like, "Do you want to hang out at my house?" And Kim's like, "What about your parents?" And Lindsay's like, "What about them?" So they're going to be friends.
Yeah.
So very nice. Daniel is thrilled. He gives Nick a high five about this or something. But what we don't know is back at home, mom and dad are about to make up because dad tells mom that he loves her like a pot roast. And he does appreciate everything she does for him. So they fuck. They have a nice afternoon fuck. And it's the most enthusiastic Canada Joe's ever been about fucking because he knows he never has to help clean the dishes. And the geeks get home and realize that the parents are fucking and they're mortified, except that Neil wants to listen, which just makes Sam even more mortified. This show is just low key about Neil being a pervert, really. Yeah. And then Lindsay and Kim get home and Lindsay's like, "We don't have to hang out." And they're like, "But, let's do it anyway." And so there's a brief moment where Neil says hi to Lindsay, which seems like they remembered he's in love with her for the first time since episode 2. And then Lindsay and Kim realize the parents are in there slamming. And Kim's like, "Wow, Lindsay, your parents are swingers," which is not what a swinger is. And I would think that Kim might know what a swinger is, but maybe not. And that is how the episode ends.
Mom actually comes out pulling her sweater up and says, "Oh, we're just going to have pizza tonight." So her sort of concern with the rote routine of pot roast and chicken every night is clouded by getting fucking Canada Joe little seed in her.
I don't understand how they thought that was a good plot for 1999. I really don't understand how we were doing I'm not going to help you with the dishes.
Let's fuck.
My life is harder than yours.
Yeah.
Fuck me as a reward.
Yeah.
1992, sure, there's an episode of Mad About You about that. But yeah, that was a disappointment. But the sports thing was really nice. That was a pretty nice arc. The Lindsay and Kim thing is interesting, and it has echoes in the next one, because the real problem with the show, and I was actually thinking about this morning, is there's still no reason for these people, the freaks, to be friends, right? There's still no reason for Lindsay to be friends with the freaks. And so she and Kim have just become friends because they're the only two girls, presumably, but they never had they have absolutely nothing except their present experience that they can talk about, because they're this is the first time we've ever established they're in a class together. There's been nothing like that. So the next episode really emphasizes friendships, I guess, would be one way.
If we had watched it in a different order, there was an episode that kind of established their friendship a little bit better.
Okay.
So we'll see that in the future.
When it's too late. Okay. So next episode is called
Looks and Books.
Looks and Books.
So Looks and Books, I don't have as many notes on. I watched it twice, once earlier today. I'm also not a huge fan of this episode, but there's some good Bill and a little bit of good Rosso. So I'm excited about it. So my whole takeaway from this, and a large point that will encapsulate kind of the whole episode, is every main character whose experience we see is having some sort of mini existential crisis. I also have Disco Ken and Friends with Fenders. And I had a 42 in there. Must have been the Mathletes thing. But there's other things we can talk about too. What are your three things?
My three things are, let's see here. I don't know what that note is. That's weird. My first note will be car insurance in the 80s, or car insurance in 1980, W.C. Fields, and Baby Wallace. So
I don't know what Baby Wallace is. That'll be exciting.
It'll be a surprise for later.
Okay.
Yes. But the episode,
go ahead.
We do need to talk about how it opens.
Okay.
It opens with two non-jock, non-freak, non-geek guys, which are not in the show very often, going up to Lindsay and saying, "If I give you a joint, will you have sex with me?"
Yeah.
And then they laugh at her and give each other high fives for doing that and walk away, presumably because freaks have sex and smoke pot. But that's never really emphasized later. There's a lot of continuity to this one. And actually, if this episode had been episode 4, if they'd done this Mathletes plot in episode 4, I feel like it would have been a lot more effective. But then we get the car thing real quick.
Yeah.
Which is the freaks have got a gig for the band, but they need Lindsay to borrow her parents' station wagon to drive the shit around.
And I have a point about that, because this all happened so quickly. How are you going to cram 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people into a station wagon and still have room for all the equipment that they're picking up? I think all of this could have been avoided if, the people who needed to be there were there and everybody else was superfluous, wasn't in the car. The whole car accident thing could have been avoided. But that's me looking at it from outside.
Looking at it from outside, not from inside the car where Seth Rogen's farting, which is one of his big moments. He's in this episode. He wasn't in last episode. They mentioned him in last episode. But he actually has a bunch of bits in this episode. And
my larger point about the existential crisis, I think, starts with that. If I give you a joint, will you have sex with me?
Okay.
Because I think Lindsay is suddenly realizing that now she is a freak. She is identified by outsiders, not just people who know her, but by people she doesn't even know, who we've not even really seen, as a freak. And this sort of starts her down the road where the car crash that's happening. And plus, you get 6 teenagers together. I know this from experience. Things are just going to escalate. And that's what happens in the car is Daniel is complaining about Lindsay being a bad driver, and Daniel and Kim are fighting about where this house is that they need to get to. And Ken is threatening to fart in the car, and what's his name is giving him a hard time about it, right? Why can't Nick is giving him a hard time about it. And so it just sort of escalates, and she turns around to tell Ken to not fart, to kind of hit him and tell him not to do it. And a car backs out and she slams into it. Luckily, they're driving houses and nobody gets hurt.
And it's one of those accidents where the other car is pretty much fine and your car is totally fucked. Yeah. So her car is totally fucked. She is mortified, worried about getting in trouble. Daniel sexually harasses the woman that they hit, which is sort of so much in this episode is raised and never gets addressed by the end of it. But anyway, so then we cut over back to school where the geeks are hanging out, and Sam sees Cindy making out with Troy. That's his name, right?
No, it's not Troy. It's something else, and I don't have it written down right now. Whatever, the jock, the boyfriend.
Jonathan Brandis too.
Yes, from the previous episode, the basketball player jock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Basketball player.
Todd. You were close.
So Neil says that it's because he's got great hair, and that ladies like foxy guys
with feathered hair. Yeah,
maybe Bill says that because we have yet to meet Bill's mom, but it's sort of been established she dates a lot.
Yes, I was just going to say that. It's establishing this theme that Bill's mom is a single woman about the town.
So this is actually where we get the follow-up on the accident, where Daniel says some shitty things to the woman who got hit. And then at one point he says, "What about car insurance, stupid?" Yeah. And I'm like, car insurance in 1980? I'm pretty sure it wasn't required in Michigan in the mid-90s when my friend lived there. I distinctly remember them making it a law there. So it wouldn't have been required in 1980.
I was a mere child.
So there you go. Know. But then we cut to the dinner table. We miss Lindsay's parents' initial reaction. And instead we get Dad telling her that he could have her charged with Grand Theft Auto, that he's never going to believe her again. She's grounded forever, and she never gets to hang out with those kids, those burnouts again. So Lindsay's sad, obviously, and terrified. Millie comes over.
She looks terrified, too, at the dinner table. She's crying. She's seemingly very shaken up about the accident, as well as getting in trouble. I mean, that's bad enough. But.
And the accident does come back because when Millie just gets to come over and hang out, which is not established. But again, this is why it should have been earlier, and we could have actually had them have a relationship instead of just Lindsay being shitty to Millie, regardless of her liking Christian music or whatever. So Millie is like comforting her, and that's when Lindsay talks about how scary the car accident was because of the thud. And then Millie says something about how she tells a story about mathletes bleeding and how much the mathletes miss Lindsay.
And it's a very obvious, like at that moment, it's like, oh, she's going to join the mathletes again.
Yeah.
Like you can see the actresses, not that she's doing it, but you can see the wheels spinning in her head. Like, oh, this is what's happening next.
But then first we get Sam fixing up his hair. So he fixes up his hair. He goes to breakfast. And this is where Dad is complaining he doesn't know enough about cars and he thinks he's going to get ripped off, which, okay. But then also Lindsay dresses nice today.
She's wearing a cute little sweater and a skirt, and she's got little bows in her hair, and it's the same old Lindsay they used to know. And mom is very pleased, and dad seems kind of confused at what's going on. And she kisses them both before she leaves for school.
And she goes in with Sam. I kept expecting a Sam and Lindsay scene this episode because it needed one, and there really wasn't one. Yeah. But they get to school, and Rosso sees them coming in and says something like, "Don't the Weirs look nice today?" And they're like, "Thank you, Mr. Rosso."
Yeah.
And then Lindsay runs into the freaks who start making fun of her.
And she explodes at them. "It's all your fault. I'm sick of you guys getting me into trouble. You're fucking losers. Just because your lives are going nowhere doesn't mean that mine is." She really goes to town. She's still really upset. And she kind of gets teased by Ken, like, "Oh, is your dad mad?" And Daniel makes some comment about her being on her period, which
was probably just James Franco.
Ad lib. And to which Lindsay freaks out, like really freaks out at him, and essentially calls him stupid for making such an obvious finger quote joke. Yeah, that was hard. That was hard. I don't like that. I don't like when people fight, but whatever. That's me.
But then they get to lunch, and we stick with the freaks who are talking about what they're going to do with their future.
And they keep calling Lindsay, essentially calling her a bitch. Like, what does she know? Like, who is this? Just because she's a stupid smart girl doesn't mean we're going to amount to nothing. And they're really trashing her. And it seems in the moment like they're really upset with her about her turning her back on them. But later it turns out something a little bit different.
So Seth Rogen's going to sell his dad's company and move to Hawaii after his dad dies. Kim's going to become a lawyer and help the downtrodden, which someone jokes, which will include breaking Daniel out of jail. And to which he says, "I'm not going to jail." And then somebody says, "What else are you going to do?" And they're like, "No, he has no ideas."
Yeah.
And then Nick says he's going to be a lumberjack DJ.
First, Nick says, "You guys, this isn't about the crash."
Oh, that's right.
This is because Lindsay's so upset that I broke up with her.
So,
and Busy Phillips. I'm saying Busy Phillips because I can imagine her saying this in real life. Says something like, "Oh, what are you going to be, a psychologist?" Like kind of making fun of him and then he says, "Yeah, he's going to be a lumberjack and what?
A DJ.
A DJ." And it's just so like 8-year-old, like, this is what I want to do when I grow up.
Let's not forget that this is not what happened with why they broke up.
Yeah.
So it's either a retcon or just yet another reason not to like anything about Nick.
No, it's another reason not to like anything about Nick is that he's trying to control the narrative of the situation, and now Lindsay's not there to defend herself, so he can make shit up.
So at the same time, Lindsay goes to lunch at the mathletes table, and so she is hanging out with her old friend Millie and the other athletes.
Playing with a graphing calculator, which I thought was funny.
Yes. But what does Lindsay need a calculator for? She's the human calculator. Then there's the geeks. So at the geeks table, it was pretty interesting because Gordon is there.
Yeah.
And so's Harris.
Yeah.
So
they've expanded the geek universe to include these two regular series regulars, which is great.
Yes. But it does raise the question of when they established Harris initially, he was too cool to hang out with them because he was older. He's no longer too cool to hang out with them. But Harris has a really good scene later, actually. Yeah. So Cindy comes over for a pencil because she's too cool now to carry a pencil. And she makes fun of Sam's hair that he spent so much time on. And so he feels bad. But Neil's like, "Well, you need to dress different." And they're like, "What the hell do you know, Neil?" And Neil says, "Well, I dress myself and I know I look."
But they call him a ventriloquist dummy, which I think is hilarious because he's so little in his sweater vests. He's so cute.
I dress well and groom myself.
Yeah.
So at dinner that night at the Weirs, Sam wants to go shopping for clothes. He doesn't want his mom going with him. And
But she'll buy him Garanimals, which I think is funny because I don't think they make clothes for older kids. Maybe they did in the 80s. That's just like baby clothes, Garanimals.
But Lindsay tells her parents she's going to join the mathletes again. So the next, that follows up with Lindsay going to the math teacher who is unable to put her first chair or what first block. Instead, she's going to be in the reserves, but they're going to get her back. And so this is where Kim and Daniel fight because Kim's going to go to class and pay attention, but Daniel just wants to fuck during the day, get her that extra biology credit.
Ugh.
And okay, so this is where we establish that all of the mathletes except for Millie are fucking gross human beings. So Lindsay's telling math jokes, but then the new superstar shows up, Shelly. And so they start talking shit about the freaks and about how Kim's pregnant and whatever.
They were probably all high when they got in a car accident. Yeah. And it's just Shelly. The other mathletes are kind of defending her a little bit. Lindsay.
They get shitty later on though. No. So yeah. The mathletes are mean girls. But then Lindsay's response to this is to go tell so Lindsay does not like Shelly. And she goes to the math teacher and says, let's cut the crap. You need me in first block if you want to win. What's the point of having a team if you're not going to win?
Yeah.
And it's very competitive. It's a side of Lindsay we haven't seen before.
She wants to kick Shelly's ass at math.
Yes. She wants to show up her teammate, Shelly.
Yeah.
Which is present, but like never really goes anywhere.
Yeah.
It gets lost. Quite a few things this episode get lost. But then Sam's back at the mall, back at the shop where what's his face worked. Jason Schwartzman's worked.
Yeah.
But he's not there today. And
so they're dealing with
there.
Joel Hodgson. Yes. And all of his adorable glory and that terrible wig. Oh, I love him to pieces, but that wig is awful.
And he says, do you want to be a stud or do you want to be a super stud?
And Bill, perfect. Martin Starr, perfect. Sam, super stud. Tell him you want to be a super stud. As he's shoving a pretzel into his face.
Because he can't
eat in the store.
Outside. Yeah.
It is again, this is the Martin Starr scene to watch, to look out for. But the stud or super stud thing was great too. Sam, go for super stud. Go for super stud. I love it. And I love that Joel says, hey, guy, you can't eat in here. I like that he calls him guy. I don't know why I love that so much. It's so stupid.
But he sells Sam on a Parisian night suit. It's going to be all the rage.
And it's a blue leisure suit.
Yeah.
I don't know. He gets made fun of in so many ways for wearing this. And most of them are funny. Some of them are not.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's right. There's just the vast homophobia that they somehow make worse as it goes along. But so then we go back to the Lindsay's arc where she's going to get placed in first block. And the way they're going to do it is they're going to bump Millie.
She doesn't get placed in first block, though. She just gets put on the team. Shelly's still in first block.
Well, first block's 4 people, though. It's not like first position. It's the first team because Lindsay goes before Shelly later.
Okay. Maybe I misread it. Okay.
But anyway, so Millie gets bumped, but Millie's like, that's fine. I don't mind.
It's for the good of the team.
It's for the good of the team. And it's going to get Lindsay back into her life.
Yeah.
So then we cut to...
is it Sam in the mirror? Because I have a lot to say about that.
Yes. Sam in the mirror.
And
this is also the W.C. Fields.
Yeah. Yep. So we're in Sam's bedroom and he's got the suit still on the hanger and he's dancing around. It's a montage of him essentially spinning around with holding the suit in front of him dancing and practicing, saying hi to people and hey, why don't we get out of here? It is he's being schmoozy to himself in the mirror, and it is adorable. It's so cute. He's such a wee little guy, and he's trying so hard to look grown up and cool and smooth, and with his feathered hair and his leisure suit. It's so cute. And I watched it the second time this morning, and I was giggling. It was adorable.
On the wall in the background, in addition to his 1941 poster, is a big W.C. Fields poster.
It's giant. It's a huge poster.
It's another one of the sure jads of the production design for Sam's bedroom. I'm just like, okay, guys, you bet. Who did the best frat comedy? Okay, so then we're going to cut to Millie and Lindsay. This also sort of doesn't go anywhere either. That Millie is actually upset she's getting bumped, but she's going to do it anyway. She's going to be okay with it to keep Lindsay in her life again. Yeah. And Lindsay gives her shit for not cleaning her room, to which Millie says, I did clean my room.
I just cleaned it.
Yeah. And then we cut to Lindsay going home and talking to Mom about how she's going to kick Shelly's ass. And Mom's like, oh, is she from the other high school? And she's like, no, she's, on my team. What are you talking about?
And Mom says, are you having fun? And she's like, yeah, of course. Of course I'm having fun.
So apparently season 0 Freaks and Geeks was just Lindsay being a shit on mathletes for a year. Yeah. And like Millie being her stooge and doing damage control. So apparently that's what her freshman year was like or whatever. But then we cut to, is it the next day when Sam comes into school in his outfit.
And he is feeling himself at first. Stomping down that runway in his high heel boots, which they never address. He's got
he's got a little address the boots. He would have had to buy those too.
Little platform heeled boot, and he's feeling himself, and he's finger gunning people. Hey, how's it going? And we cut to reactions of like a billion reactions. I feel like there's tons of them. People laughing at him, people looking at him confused, and slowly his confidence diminishes as he's walking down the hallway, which is
someone says Elvis hasn't left the building, which was good.
That was Sam Levine. That was Neil, I think, who said that.
Well, then Neil follows it up with saying that it is a jumpsuit like his grandpa wears in Florida, and it's for people who are too lazy to put on pants.
Yes. And the thing, there's an Evil Knievel reference.
Yes, you're not supposed to look like Evil Knievel.
Somebody tells him he looks like Chrissy from Three's Company and Saturday Night Fever also.
Yes. Something that threw me about this, though, is in previous episodes, they were talking about how much they liked Alien. And I raised some questions about that. There were jumpsuits in Alien. So, okay, whatever. Okay. It was good enough for Ash the android, but it's not good enough for Sam. But he's going to try to get out of school so he can go home and change. And there's a lengthy sequence where they're like trying to hide him from view. The geeks are walking him down, and Gordon actually gets something to do. And then he gets to the door, and the school secretary says, get your butt to class, kid. You can't just leave.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird because it certainly has been an open campus whenever the Freaks plots required it, but whatever. But then we get to class, which so a bunch of the students make homophobic comments about Sam, and the teacher somehow then makes it worse.
It's a misguided attempt to make Sam feel better, but it's actually more homophobic.
Yes, it is.
If he feels the freedom to dress the way that makes him feel confident, then we should all be glad to be that homosexual slur that I'm not going to say.
Yes.
And it's palpable. The discomfort that I felt was palpable in that moment.
It's one of those things where I'm like, oh, that's right. The show doesn't have any gay people. Like, gay people don't actually exist to these characters. Like, It's one of those things like, oh yeah, that's right. Before TV in 2015, there really weren't a lot of gay people on TV.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is it's actually not a surprise given who created the show and who's on the show. But anyway, but then we actually cut to a very just strange, nice scene between Harris and Daniel. So James Franco.
Yeah.
And,
it's really nice.
Where Daniel just happens across Harris and he's like, hey man. And Harris is like, wait, are you going to beat me up? He's like, no, I just want to like know what you're up to right now. Harris is like, well, I'm reading the Monsters Guide for Dungeons and Dragons. Do you play? Daniel's like, no. And he's like, you should. He's like, okay.
You'd be a good dungeon master.
Yeah, I can just tell these things. Yeah. And so I don't think Daniel would actually be a good dungeon master. But anyway, can't imagine how much fun that is to play Dungeons and Dragons with Harris. But
you're not going to have to imagine.
Oh, good. It's a 3-parter coming up. But then they have a conversation about whether or not Harris thinks Daniel is a loser. And Harris says, well, you can't be a loser because you have sex. But if you didn't have sex,
we could talk about it.
We could go through it.
Yeah.
And so like Daniel, eventually they talk a bit and Daniel's like, you're an interesting guy, Harris. And he's like, yes, I'd be cool, but I don't have sex though, which is weird because I thought earlier he did have a girlfriend and it was implied he had sex. But also we find out that Harris's father is at this point 75 years old.
70
and so,
or 75.
70. Yeah. But so he is the son of a 60-year-old man, which might explain why he is so comfortable in his skin type thing. So then we cut to the mathletes competition where we discover where Kim comes in to watch. The parents are there watching Lindsay. Kim comes in and then she finds out that Nick is there already. And they are going to watch. He's there to watch Lindsay because even though he says he didn't have anything else to do, he's killing time, but not really. He's going to, he's there to support Lindsay. So.
Which I don't even know how they knew about it if they haven't been talking, how they knew she was even going to be there, but whatever.
Yeah. So, toggle over to Sam's arc where Alan is bullying him with homophobic slurs. And Sam is going to finally defend himself, which Alan is thrilled about because now he really gets to beat him up. But then Rosso finds them or happens upon them. And Sam tells Rosso he just needs a ride home. So the rest of the it's going to be split between Rosso and Sam and then Lindsay and Mathletes.
Yeah.
So first at Mathletes is Lindsay kind of being shitty to Shelley, and then the freaks hooting in the back for Lindsay.
And most importantly, the parents turn around because these are the kids, again, that she's not supposed to be hanging out with, and see the freaks. And they hold up a fender that they bought, they stole, whatever, for the car that the dad has been searching for and thinking he's going to get ripped off for. So they did a good thing, which goes uncommented upon, completely uncommented upon. And in fact, I've seen this episode 3 or 4 times, did not know what it was that they were doing. I was like, what the hell are they holding up? It's not a sign that says go Lindsay. It's the fender that the dad needs. So this is their way of making amends to Lindsay and making amends to Lindsay's parents, which I thought was
not get addressed.
Which I thought was very nice.
Yes.
I thought it was
a cut scene.
It was so nice. And again, goes
They cut it clearly.
Yeah. So that was my freaks with fenders. Yeah. I was so sad that didn't get more attention.
Did we miss the other 2 showing up too? Because they're all there at this point. So
we missed them coming in. It was sort of a surprise, I guess.
Yes, they must have. There's a cut scene where they tell Canada Joe they found the fender and he then forgave them or something, or didn't. which would make the end of the episode interesting. So let's see. Sam and Rosso are back at the house, and Sam doesn't want to go back to school. So Rosso tells him a story about being humiliated once by a bunch of rednecks or something.
For being a hippie.
And for being a hippie. And then he explains that it's all about confidence, Sam. If you think you're the coolest guy in the world, you are the coolest guy in the world. But then we cut back to the mathletes, where we've just found out that Lindsay has not lost her human calculator chops. She has just had a perfect round.
Yeah.
So
and it's Shelley's turn.
It's Shelley's turn. And Shelley gets her ass kicked by Baby Wallace. Sorry.
And Lindsay has been taunting her and psyching her out the whole time. Who's Baby Wallace?
Wallace from I can't remember. Percy Daggs the third, I think, is the actor's name, but he's from Veronica Mars. But This was 5 years before that, and he's a wee child.
Aww.
So yes, it was cute, and Shelley gets her ass kicked, and then at the sleepover, the mathletes sleepover, that's when the other mathletes girls are talking about how Shelley has it coming.
Yeah.
So cool. They're cool. But then Sam is having a sleepover with the geeks that also wasn't mentioned anywhere. They don't invite Harris and Gordon though.
Yeah, I had a friend in high school whose brother I had a huge crush on, and anytime I had a sleepover at her house, the brother would be gone. Like, he would be having a sleepover at his friend's house. So even though we know that the mathlete sleepover was pre-planned, I wonder if it was like, Sam, this is a good time to invite your creepy friends over. So because Lindsay's not here for them to hit on, and by them I mean Sam. Neil, yeah.
Yes. He's just hanging out outside the parents' bedroom, hoping that they get it on. But they have a conversation that maybe Rosso's cool. And
Martin Starr's thing is, wait, you seem cooler already, Sam. Like, maybe Rosso's right. You seem cooler already. What a good supportive friend.
But back at Millie's, Lindsay can't sleep, and so she's going to go home.
Yeah.
And Millie's like, to use the bathroom? And Lindsay's like, no, I can't be a mathlete. It's just not who I am anymore. And so she goes out, and after saying, we'll always be friends, to which I said, really? Because treated her like shit and didn't really, okay. Again, if this had been episode 3 or 4, or if this arc had been in episode 3 or 4, it would have been a lot more effective than the Nick romance arc, Nick the stalker arc. But Lindsay happens upon the freaks hanging out in front of the convenience store or something, and Kim is trying to get the boys to go see a foreign film because they're not dummies. They're going to go see the new Fellini. The Brady's were to go see in Free Spirit. But
they don't actually mention the name of the movie. But there's a whole bunch of like that hacky, like, oh, you mean I have to read it?
To read it? I'll read a movie for you, I guess, Kim. That's Daniel's redemption arc, is that he tells Kim he'll read a movie for her.
Yeah.
But I think there's some lines about, is Nick still talking about the breakup? But he brings it up somewhere else too. But then when Lindsay gets her, Seth Rogen says, can we borrow your dad's car? Which is more successful than it should be.
Yeah.
But then they go off to hang out and go see the Midnight Movie, which is a foreign art house film, because that's how it was in 1980s suburban Detroit, I think. And everything is right with the world. And presumably in the cut scenes, Canada Joe has forgiven the geeks or the freaks. And so Lindsay won't, have the cops called on her, which seems more likely than anything else with how the episode has played out. But I mean, my last note is this would play a lot different if the athletes didn't suck, right? Like, of the two friend groups, the freaks are less toxic than the mathletes at this point.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
They might get her into trouble, but they're not.
She won't lose her soul. Like,
Yeah. But my whole larger point about the existential crisis is that Lindsay is suffering from it in this 42-minute span that we're watching her, by like, these freaks get me into trouble and they do these bad things that she doesn't necessarily want to do. But she kind of gets dragged along. So she's going to join the mathletes, and then she realizes that she's not one of them anymore either. So she's going to go back to these other people. But in her existential crisis and her leaving the friend group, the freak friend group, they all, except for Ken, and Nick, I guess. So it's just Kim and Daniel have this existential crisis of their own, where James Franco realizes through conversation that he doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. Kim realizes that she could do more if she put her mind to it. And ultimately, again, the redemption for them is unmentioned in the episode, except for the fact that they hold up this fender. And so they all kind of have resolved themselves to like, oh shit, we did the wrong thing. And they don't actually say that they're sorry, and they don't actually get their moment of glory. And then on the geek side, I guess, Sam is having his own little crisis, right? Where he wants to be attractive to women. And his only way to do that apparently is to completely change who he is. And even so, Gordon even says, like, my mom says that you should just be happy with what God gave you. And, he doesn't have a resolution either, except that the leisure suit was such a massive failure to make him cool, because it's not who he really is. But he never really gets that redemption of discovering who he is. But he's 14, so he still has a whole life ahead of him.
Maybe next week he'll have that thing. It'd also been a great time for Maureen to come back, but no, apparently she doesn't do that. Yeah, I mean, they were, again, besides the sort of, I don't even know, like the homophobia as punchline era of comedy that we are still in, of white male comedy that started in 1975 and continued in full spirit until about 2016. We're still firmly in there. Other than that, like, I think if it had come earlier, it would have been better. Lots of missed opportunities with character development. Like, this is one of the first episodes that's felt like so obviously something got cut. Like, very obviously the Fender thing got cut, right? Like, what did we miss? Who found the Fender? Was it Daniel or was it Ken? Like, how did they know that they needed the Fender? Yeah. Like, is there a cut scene where Dad is getting, the mechanics are making fun of Dad for not knowing about cars, but it's Ken's dad's body shop or something?
Yeah.
Is it Daniel's dad's body? Like, where's this resolution?
Yeah.
And then, so that's a bummer that wasn't in there, but also not super surprising given.
And it would have been, like you said, it would have been a great opportunity, because we already know that Daniel kind of futzes around with cars. We've seen him playing in his own car, when he drives up to pick up Millie, they talk about whatever, the speakers or whatever. So he's obviously done work on his own car, and it would have been just a good opportunity for some character development, even with him or with Ken or whoever got the Fender. Like, oh, well, I've seen cars come in before because I work in my dad, like you said, like I work in my dad's body shop and I know exactly what they need. But so it was a missed opportunity there, which is unfortunate, especially for Ken, because we haven't seen hardly any of Seth Rogen in this whole series that we watched. So
then he will go on to be Judd Apatow's leading man. So interesting. Well, that I don't know if he was too busy. I don't remember him existing before 2005, but he did. So yeah, I mean, it's, not far from the worst of Freaks and Geeks, far from the most problematic on Freaks and Geeks. Some of the more sort of obvious, the homophobia bit's bad, like, and it's long. but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, not too excited about this one. Maybe next week we'll have some better episodes. So what do I have? Looks and books. So The Garage Door is next, and Chokin' Token for next week. That's episodes 11 and 12.
Okay. And this is our halfway point, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again for listening, and we will be back next week. And hopefully we will get our Martin star.
Hopefully.
No. Okay.
But there's there is a good Martin Starr plot point in one. So that'll be good. That'll be good. And maybe some surprises for Andrew. We love it. Okay. Thank you all for listening.
Bye.
Bye.